Tonight says he was wrong to suggest that POTUS never signed anything after our primetime exclusive that proved that POTUS signed the letter of intent on the Russia deal. But how about the president? He looked you in the face and he said, listen to me. There was a deal. Everybody knew about it. There was a letter and it was signed by Michael Cohen. Now, there's another wave in this story. Mueller, it seems, does in fact have sights on Roger Stone, one-time key advisor to the president. Wait until you hear what he told me. The spin offensive is in full effect. And a mistake of colossal proportions. That's what a senior administration official calls President Trump's decision to pull troops out of the fight in Syria. Even Senate Republicans are lit. And we're going to go one-on-one with a key Democratic senator about what this is all about. And POTUS promised a wall. Now that promise is, wait for it, crumbling. What happened? That's the great debate. Hump day, everybody. Let's get after it. All right, we're getting closer to the truth about the depth of the president's ties to Russia. We showed you the letter of intent that Trump signed to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. Lawyer Rudy Giuliani had said the president never signed it. But now he says, quote, I was wrong if I said it. I haven't seen the quote, but I probably meant to say there was never a deal, much less a signed one. That's the mayor's statement. I take him at his word. He's invited on this show to make the case whenever he wants. The question was never about having an actual business or a done deal. Just be clear about this. It was about whether or not the president had any involvement with Russians when he told you he didn't, and the answer is he did. So we still have an outstanding question. Will the president come clean about this?
We were thinking about building a building. I guess we had to inform it was an option. I don't know what you'd call it. It was just reported very well by Catherine Herridge, who's a terrific reporter on Fox. She talks about a letter that he signed. I don't even remember it.
Listen, again, I worked with Catherine Herridge. She is a good reporter. The president does not need Fox to tell him what he signed. I want to bring in two former Intel officials, Phil Mudd and Mike Rogers. Good to see you both. Mike, here's my theory of the case. They're not getting ready to be in front of a judge or a prosecutor. They've never been preparing for that. Rudy Giuliani, the president, etc., are preparing to convince the American people he did nothing wrong, and they will spin and they will twist the facts to suit.
I'm not going to disagree with you, Chris. I think there's a lot of it there. Here's the one thing that baffles me on this, however. So if you think about all of the lying that's gone on that has resulted in either an indictment or a plea deal by any of the folks surrounded by him, Flynn or Papadopoulos or Cohen, there's a key element in all of it. They all lied about Russia. And that's what, after a while, I start thinking, where there's smoke, there's fire. And the nutty thing is, it would not have been wrong for the president, who's in real estate business in New York City. Guess what? The Russians are there. They're playing in that market. You're going to bump into Russian businessmen in New York City. Why create this elaborate story other than, hey, yes, we tried to go into business in Russia and it just didn't work out, or for whatever reason I was president, I decided not to go ahead with the deal. But that's what bothers me, and I'm with you on Rudy Giuliani. I do not believe he intended to mislead anyone. I think he is trying to create this narrative. They're trying to create the narrative about the FBI being bad, the Justice Department being bad, because there is all of these folks who are now flipping, who are going to be in front of judges and probably testify along the way as to what the Trump organization may have been doing that may or may not have been appropriate.
All right, and Mike, like I said, the mayor is invited on here. Let's get after it. You lay out the case to the audience. You'll get more time than anywhere else. Phil Mudd, you have had a sour look on your face for much of Mike Rogers' opening statement. Why?
Because if you look at what we're talking about Giuliani and whether you lied, I think the question is much simpler. He's too lazy to do his homework. Remember the Melania Trump conversation where he said that Melania Trump was comfortable with what the president did and the various payoffs to women. And in a remarkable moment, the First Lady's office comes out and says, the First Lady has actually never had a conversation with Giuliani about this. I don't think Giuliani lied. I think he went out and said, I'm not sure I've done my homework on whether the president signed or not, but it sounds better to say he didn't sign, so that's what I'm going to say.
Exactly, because that's what they're doing here. All right, let's shift to the next wave of it. The special counsel wants the congressional testimony from Roger Stone. Now, when I hear that, I feel like, oh, well, this is pretty premature then, because certainly if he were getting close to taking any action, he would already looked at the testimony. But be that as it may, Roger Stone is certainly going to be part of any PR campaign there is in this situation. And look at the statement that he put out. Vintage Stone, and also a great window into how Team Trump is going to handle this. Let's put up his statement. This is Adam Schiff's wet dream. Where's the Russian collusion? Where's the WikiLeaks collaboration? Where's the proof or evidence that I received allegedly hacked or allegedly stolen emails from WikiLeaks or Julian Assange or anyone else and passed them to Donald Trump or the Trump campaign or anyone else? This is his thing. Make your case. I'm going to fight. We don't believe you, Mike. And that's what we're going to see at every iteration of this. But nobody knuckles up the way Roger Stone does. That's why the president kept him so close for so long.
I got to tell you, I worked organized crime as an FBI agent in the city of Chicago. I met 100 guys like this. They're pretty tough until the gavel falls and you're standing in front of the judge. And I'll tell you, I'm not buying it. And here's where I think that he may be in some legal problem if he knowingly facilitated the leak of stolen computer information or data, WikiLeaks. If he knowingly did that, he conspired to do that, he's in violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And so that's a real crime that has real penalty to it. I cannot believe that the special counsel, and it clearly to me looks like they're preparing at least a charge for lying to Congress and maybe even the FBI. But I'm going to bet, because he's not cooperating, that won't be the only charge. And that's where I think he has to worry about it. But I'm telling you, this guy, he dresses like a gangster. He talks like a tough guy. Again, I've seen 100 of these guys. He'll fold eventually when those charges come up, and he's looking at a lengthy prison term, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. That changes people's.
Well, he has sworn he would never testify against the president. He is not new to this game. I'm just happy he's not Italian. If you're going to characterize him as a mob guy, I'm happy he's not Italian.
Hey, listen, I worked in Chicago, Chris. I'll tell you, half the guys weren't Italian.
Good.
They opened up their doors, and the Chicago mob had Polish folks and Jewish folks, and they had a whole collection of
plenty of desperate ethnics. They didn't have to all be Italian. Phil, let's take a look at this. What I think is most likely with Roger Stone, not that it's a problem, but you got to look at the materiality of it, okay? What was he lying about? It seems most logical. What he was lying about is who he talked to and what he knew, and whether or not he told the president the same. In terms of him helping distribute, Mike's right about the legalities of it. I just haven't seen any proof of that. The changing stories part, listen to these sound bites.
I actually have communicated with Assange. I believe the next tranche of his documents pertain to the Clinton Foundation. What I actually said in my testimony was that I had never communicated with Assange.
The hype, baby. The hype can get you, Phil, if they find it to be material. If they find out, listen, you lied, man. You wanted to sound like you were the man. You weren't the man. We've got you. Is that material?
I think it is. There's two pieces here. One is the simple piece that we're seeing, and that is, as we saw in cases like Manafort busted for lying, Flynn busted for lying, if you stand in front of, whether you're under oath or not, the Congress, you're going to get busted. I think the most fascinating part of this case, Chris, easily, is, look, we had, as you just had out there on tape, Roger Stone talking about his communications with people connected with WikiLeaks. What does Mueller have now? He has communications, including phone and email, I presume text messages. He has a lot of interviews of people who are affiliated with Stone. He has presumably things like travel records. Did people affiliated with Stone go to London? Did they go to the embassy, the Uruguayan embassy, to see Roger Stone? He knows already, I would wager, whether or not Roger Stone had inappropriate contacts related to WikiLeaks. And meantime, he's going to charge him, I suspect, with lying. And that's going to be a hammer when he says, if you want to do something about this charge, you better talk to us about WikiLeaks.
I think it's got to be more than that. That's the only time I disagree with Phil tonight. I just think it has to be more charged than that. If it's just lying, I think they don't have enough. I think they're going to have to put a case together that has more weight in it. That's my only concern with where Phil's at tonight. And his sour look, by the way.
I know, that's just his face.
That,
the timing matters also in that they're just asking for that testimony now. You'd think that they'd have more ducks in a row with all the time that they've been processing this. We always keep it simple on this show. I believe very much in Occam's razor. Go with the least assumptions. Why do they lie? They keep lying about things related to Russia. There must be a reason. I don't want to waste your guys' expertise on just Mueller. It's important, but it's not the only thing. Mike, the theory of the president's quick move to withdraw troops from Syria is, it breaks my heart to write those letters home. And we said we'd go there, do the job. We did it. It's over. We're leaving. Well, if that's his theory of the case, why isn't he pulling us out of Afghanistan? Why pull us out of the most recent theater? Why not Yemen? Why not Iraq?
Why not places in Africa where we have U.S. personnel exposed trying to push back on terrorist
operations? So why Syria and why this way, Mike? What's your take?
This is so frustrating to me. This is exactly what Barack Obama did. The only difference is Barack Obama actually planned it out and had discussions with our allies when he announced we were pulling out of Iraq. Many of us, me included at the time, were screaming, hey, this will cause a huge problem. And guess what? It caused a huge problem. We are going to get ready to repeat that same very mistake, only now in Syria. After the president did a great thing, he told the military, go forth and kick some fanny in Syria and get this thing done. And they did. And all the shackles were taken off. They had different rules of engagement. They had different target sets they could do. They could engage in different training exercises with different factions within Syria that I think were very, very helpful. And now, again, I don't think this was just about that. The Turks were saying, hey, we're going to come down into Turkey. That's a hard problem. You got to face it. The Russians have said, hey, we're going to continue this. The Syrians have been executing Americans. They just executed a 26-year-old American who was participating in an NGO, the government of Syria. So to do that on the heels of that, I tell you, it just gets my blood pressure up. It makes us look weak. It destabilizes our allies who are coalition forces who are saying, hey, we can't really leave. And our soldiers who are standing in the ditch right there, pointing guns at bad people are thinking, what in the heck am I doing here? Well, this was not the way to. Twitter is not the way to conduct this.
Well, they put out a video. They put out a video also. I'll just say, I hope the timing has nothing to do with a distraction from other stories. I hope he wouldn't leverage the men and women in theater that way. Mike, Phil, let's leave it there. I'm short on time. Fellas, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Be well. If I don't speak to you before, Merry Christmas to both of you.
Merry Christmas.
All right, so here's what the president said today on Syria, just so you know.
We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. So our boys, our young women, our men, they're all coming back, and they're coming back now. We won, and that's the way we want it, and that's the way they want it.
It's got a lot of Republicans and a lot of people in the military shaking their head. They're hearing echoes of mission accomplished from President George W. Bush. Nobody knew this was coming. Why not? Why this move right now, this way? Next. Defeated. Tonight, someone within Trump's team, a senior administration official, says this will, quote, put American and allied lives in danger and that it is a mistake of colossal proportions. The announcement of American troops coming home traditionally has been greeted by scenes like this one. The difference between this and the confusion you now see swirling around because in 1945, the work was really done. There was a plan for peace, and the vision was a way forward explained to the American people. Compare that to this. Remember Bush declaring mission accomplished in Iraq? That's what this is sounding like to Republican ears right now, and even those in military official capacity. 97% of the deaths in Iraq happened after the so-called major combat end on May 1st, 2003, after mission accomplished. So this isn't the first time that Trump has tried to declare victory in Syria. That's an important piece of context here. He tweeted his own mission accomplished back in April. Now, since then, the message from his own has been consistent. We're not done. Don't forget about that mission accomplished. Don't listen to him. Listen to us. There's a lot of work to do. There's instability. We have to stay. Don't be rash. Here's Trump's own chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff talking about this.
With regard to stabilization, we still have a long way to go.
A long way to go. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Why? Because it's not just about taking land. That's what ISIS wants. That's what the Levant is about, that area in Syria and Iraq that they think is theirs and it isn't, and they got their ass beat back and off it. True. But there are more components. There's a major diplomatic effort underway to try and fix the problems in Syria that led to this mess in the first place. So here's what's happening with Trump's State Department just last week, okay?
Nobody is declaring a mission accomplished. I think it's fair to say Americans will remain on the ground after the physical defeat of the caliphate until we have the pieces in place to ensure that that defeat is enduring.
Where's the coordination? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the State Department? We heard the same thing from people like Bolton, Pompeo, Mattis, that this isn't just about winning battles on the ground. Here's what he said in August.
It really comes down to finding a way to solve this problem of Assad's making.
I mean, you know, when you look at it in this context, it's like, well, wait, who's telling him to do this? Or why is he doing this? And that's why somewhat of a cynical suggestion I had exiting the last segment. Is this done for distraction? Is this done to keep eyes off the Mueller probe and him lying about a letter of intent and a Russia deal? I hope not, because it's not going to work. And more importantly, it could jeopardize all the work that was done on the ground. If the president isn't listening to his own administration, who is he listening to? Well, to be honest, he told us.
Well, I watch the shows. I mean, I really see a lot of great, you know, when you watch your show and all of the other shows and you have the generals.
He knows more than the generals. He watches TV, he watches Fox, the same ones that tell him there's still 30,000 ISIS fighters in Syria and Iraq. Trump has an answer for that as well.
I know more about ISIS than the generals do, believe me.
It's just not true. The president's own party is doing something we have rarely seen. You hear me call them out all the time. What's that? That's the sound of Republicans letting the president get away with what is anathema to them. Not this time. Listen to this.
If Obama had made this decision, Republicans would be all over him.
It's hard to imagine that any president would wake up and make this kind of decision.
Colossal, in my mind, mistake, a grave error.
All right. The lack of planning, the rashness, not selling it to you, not selling it to Congress. You had the fact of all this going on in terms of miscommunication. Listen to this tidbit. Republican Bob Corker, he's a player. He goes to the White House for a meeting with the president. He's sitting there waiting. He gets sent packing without ever getting to talk to the president. Why? Why diss your own? Key Democrats, on the other hand, say this move is overdue. Now, one of them is Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, who joins me now. I wonder, it would be nice to know, Senator, that the reason the president is doing this is because he met with you all, believed you, and decided to just act. But I don't think that's the case. Do you?
No, who knows why the president is making this decision today. As much as I think that it's been a mistake to have 2,000 American troops there who, you know, frankly aren't close to enough to tip the balance of power, the way that he did it is totally ham-handed, and it does make the country weaker. He pulled the rug out from under our diplomats who are on the ground in the Middle East.
And your allies.
And our allies. He did it right on the precipice of a Turkish offensive against the Kurds, after promising the Kurds for the last year and a half we would protect them. Listen, I think we have vastly overstated what 2,000 American troops can do inside a country that has hundreds of thousands of fighters on all of the other various sides. But the way in which he did this is just a head-scratcher to both people that have supported the troops being there and people like me who have opposed them.
Look, I mean, you can argue you don't have enough people there. And as long as you're going to add more people, don't call them advise and assist missions, because that's intellectually dishonest to the families of those men and women who have to go shed their blood on those battlefields. But liking this move, I don't understand. As you just said, Turkey's got an offensive coming. You know that Assad is still running wild. They just killed an American, as we heard from Mike Rogers here, who was working with an NGO. The place is unstable. If you leave, there's every indication the same things will happen that when you left Iraq too soon. You will undo the work and create even worse challenges.
Well, listen, these are not apples and apples, right? In Iraq, you had, at the time, a fairly stable, centralized government that eventually got overrun by ISIS.
Yeah.
Nothing like that exists in Syria. And there is, frankly, no evidence, Chris, to suggest that our troops, having been there for the last year, have relieved any of the humanitarian suffering or the brutal offensive campaign that has continued under Bashar al-Assad. So I don't think it's fair to say that, well, the same thing's going to happen in Syria that happened in Iraq, because what's happening in Syria right now, even as we are there, is totally unacceptable. This strategy of putting 2,000 troops has frankly not worked. It has not stopped the carnage. And frankly, those 2,000 troops were not going to be able to stop the Turks from going and attacking the Kurds.
True.
We've always had this belief that we can sort of do just a little to be able to sleep at night without ever doing enough to actually change the reality on the
also
ground.
to motivate others. You know, the virtue of advise and assist is to help people fight their own battles so that you don't have to do it for them as a proxy war everywhere in the world. Fair enough. But we do believe that the numbers of ISIS fighters have been greatly diminished. Land has been taken back. I'm just saying that if you don't want Americans overseas, that's fine. But start with Afghanistan. You got 15,000 men and women there, again, with these advise and assist, dishonest missions. They're dying over there. And why wouldn't they be taken out first?
Well, listen, it's important to recognize that the Afghanistan mission is authorized by Congress. What has also happened in Syria is that as we have had success in pushing back ISIS, the administration has admitted that the troops there are now focusing more on Iran, focusing more on protecting the Kurds. None of that has been debated or authorized by Congress. And so the difference between Afghanistan and Syria is, in part, one is authorized and one isn't. And that really should make a difference. I don't think that's why the president pulled the troops out, but a lot of us have wanted us to actually debate this before we, in a bipartisan way, endorse the fact that we have thousands of people in harm's way in Syria.
Senator Murphy, I appreciate you doing this. I know you got to run to get to a vote. This is big news. People need perspective from both sides. Thank you for providing it.
Thanks.
All right, be well. The president's signature promise seems to be going the way of the dodo. Is this going to be the president's read my lips moment? Remember the wall? Now we've got some great debate on our hands. Next. He made his campaign around immigration, let's be fair, specifically keeping people out. But his signature pledge was the wall.
I will build a great, great wall on our southern border, and I will have Mexico pay for that wall. Mark my words. We're going to build a wall. It's going to be built. It's not even, believe it or not, it's not even a difficult thing to do.
But to his supporters, today that promise for the wall is sounding a lot more like these failed promises of presidents past.
I intend to keep this promise. If you like your doctor, you'll be able to keep your doctor.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
Is President Trump going to be added to that litany of losing propositions? How bad is this for the president? Debatable, so let's have a great debate. Ana Navarro and Steve Cortez. Steve, this was the big promise. This is what he said he was going to do. People like me never believed it would get done, but you did. How do you feel today?
I sure did, and I still do, by the way. But listen, I will absolutely concede. You're right. If this wall doesn't get built, then that will join that unfortunate pantheon of presidential lies that you showed from President H.W. Bush and from President Obama. So he can't let that happen. Number one, it's bad policy. We need the wall built. Our southern border has been porous and, for the most part, basically open for far too long. So it's good policy, but it's also good politics. And I'll tell you, as someone who has pledged to work for his reelection in 2020, I can't even fathom us going into that campaign saying we came up short on the wall.
Anna, what do you think of the state of play? Do you think that he's going to wind up taking a deal, a short-term CR that doesn't have anything like this in it, and then the Democrats take control and they won't let it happen?
Honestly, Chris, I'm going to have to do a Marco Rubio and drink some water because I'm about to say some good things about Donald.
Than Marco Rubio did.
I'm about to do some, say some good things about Donald Trump, and I might have to sit, lay down and take 2 aspirin after this. Look, at some point, you've got to be less political and you've got to do what is right. You've got to govern for the people of America. Forcing a government shutdown is going to put a lot of people in pain. A lot of government workers, a lot of federal workers are going to be in pain. Is that what we want over the Christmas holiday? We are right now heading towards the worst December in stock market history, in Dow Jones history since 1931, which was the Great Depression. The last thing this country needs right now is a government shutdown and all the economic, emotional, and family circumstances that means. And so if it means disappointing some of his supporters, listen, they'll get over it. If they got over him cheating on his wife who had just given birth with a Playboy bunny and cheating on the Playboy bunny with a stripper, believe me, they will get over him doing a stopgap bill on a border wall instead of a government shutdown. It is the right thing to do, and every now and then, he's got to do the right thing.
Feel better, Steve?
No, Anna, let me, a couple things. First of all, the border, this isn't just my opinion or just Donald Trump's opinion that we need a border wall. It's the opinion of the Customs and Border Protection Union. They polled their own officers. 89% of them say that they need a border wall. Those are the frontline cops, the cops of America's border.
Americans,
protecting
too,
our
overall.
country.
Put up
They
the
tell
poll
me that
numbers.
we need it.
While Steve is talking,
and
put up the poll numbers.
And I believe them, and I think that we should give them the tools they need to do their job properly. But more importantly, too, you talk about the government shutdown, that it would inflict some pain, and I believe that's true. It would on some people near term. But you know what? There's long-term pain that is permanent pain because we have an open border, and I'm talking specifically about the people, American citizens, many of them Hispanic, who have been injured or killed by dangerous illegal aliens because we have tolerated for decades in this country lawlessness at our southern border. And combined with sanctuary cities, which unfortunately...
One thing at a time. One thing at a time. I thought I was going to put up a number about support. Hold on. I thought I was going to put up a number that showed support for the wall, but it wound up being the same kind of thing. Who supports a shutdown over this wall as context? And the GOP support is 67-19. So people in your party, they resonate off this issue. But Anna, here's what I never understood about this. Now, I'm not a rube when it comes to politics. I get the idea of a big promise. Don't get me wrong. But you heard what the president said, right? It's going to have slats in it. Do you know why he said that? I'm not a mind reader, but I know the answer to this question. That's what's there now. That's what was always going to be there. He was never going to build a brand new wall. The CBP union that you're talking about, Steve, I've talked to those men and women. They didn't want a brand new wall. They want to fix what's there, add to what's there, give them the technology they need. I get that's not as sexy as saying, give us a big brand new wall like the Wall of China with a big door and all that stuff. But that was never going to happen anyway, Anna. Couldn't he win here by saying, I'm going to get more money to make us safer on the border than we've ever been before? They'll have what they need. The border will be safer than ever. Would that be enough?
Look, it certainly would be enough for a lot of people, including me, who understand that the border is mountains and rivers, and the geography and topography is such where a border wall, like a Great Wall of China, does not work. I'm not sure if it's enough for some of his supporters who voted for him precisely because of this. But they also voted for him saying that Mexico was going to pay for this wall. And they've moved from that, right? Now they're okay with the American taxpayer paying for this wall because they know Mexico is not going to pay for this wall. And they're willing to go to a government shutdown. Listen, sitting here in an air-conditioned TV studio, I am not willing to dismiss the pain and suffering of federal workers, a lot of whom live paycheck to paycheck, who have to pay rent, who have to pay kids' tuitions, who have to pay clothes, Christmas gifts, people who have to keep national parks open, families, all sorts of American families who are planning to go visit the Capitol, visit national parks. I am not willing to dismiss the pain of those people because I'm not going to be affected. I think some people may. That's not me.
Well, look, the reality of furlough, Steve, as you know, is that it creates cash flow issues for people who don't have huge savings. They wind up getting paid at some point, but, time value of money matters when you live in paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of working people are. Sure. The reason I said one at a time to you, and put up the president's tweet because he was talking about winning on this issue and what that looks like. So much money's been poured down the drain for so many years, but when it comes to border security and the military, the Democrats fight to the death. We won on the military, which is being completely rebuilt. Not really true. One way or the other, we're going to win on the wall. Look, winning, not winning, that's politics. You're not going to stop that game, but I'm telling you, you were never going to have a brand new wall built. Anybody who works down on the border, who's in a command position, knows that. And by the way, the last thing they want is a wall they can't see through. Because for surveillance issues, that's why they designed what they have down there.
Clearly, you have to be able to. You have.
Wasn't his original plan?
See through it, of course.
Wasn't his original plan?
That's why. Well, but he's changed that clearly.
I know.
Look, he is not a. He's not a wall architect, even though he is a great builder of many great structures all over the world. But look, there has to be an actual wall, not a virtual wall. It's not a metaphor. There has to be a wall.
But in some places, it does have to be virtual.
People want.
But that's what they want. In some places, they want sensors.
In some places,
they want fencing. They want different things in different places.
Look. Here's the thing, too. Walls work, all right? And one thing I'm tired of seeing constantly in media is for people to deride this as, it's some sort of medieval idea. All we need to do is look around the world, places like Israel, Hungary, Saudi Arabia, particularly Israel.
Go to San Isidro. They were able to control the flow there, this new phenomenon of mass caravans because of the physical barriers in place. You know, you can put all media together, but that's not fair. No question, more and better. Here's the original problem. The original sin here was what the president said. He lied. He said he was going to build a big brand new wall and Mexico was going to pay for it, and it was BS. It was never going to happen. Now he's in a hole. Period. Now he's in a hole of his own making. He's a great builder. He dug a big hole.
He did not lie. I believe this is still going to happen. He has to make it happen, by the way. Look, the Congress, I think, has abdicated its responsibility to secure our American border. However, that doesn't absolve the president of his responsibility.
They're going to give more money,
so he needs to figure out a way to do this.
More money for security.
And I think the best way is to trade DACA for the wall. That's
not going to happen because you guys didn't let that bill happen. That's when all the old white men came to the president and said,
that's a clean
chain migration,
that's a
right?
Clean
Family
compromise.
reunification. They wouldn't give it to him. They wouldn't give it to him.
I'm saying,
the last deal.
I'm saying let's have a clean one-for-one trade this time.
But it didn't happen. Anna, go ahead.
For almost a year, we heard, and even after being elected president, we heard Donald Trump go to rallies and fan the flames of his supporters, saying, we need a wall, and who's going to pay
for
it?
That wall.
Mexico will. Mexico's not going to pay for
Mexico
that wall.
will.
We're not. Exactly. And that in itself was a lie. And I think we've now accepted that. And even his supporters have accepted that that was a big, fat lie. Mexico is not going to pay for the wall. American taxpayers are going to pay for the wall. And then my question is, well, what do you do with the almost half undocumented immigrants who come here by plane, who come here by other means other than crossing through the Mexican border? You know, it is a very complex issue. The wall is not going to solve this issue.
The answer is nothing.
Dealt with seriously and comprehensively.
Look what we just lived through.
And, is this the hill you're going to die on?
Nothing is.
And in the meantime, do a government shutdown and make people suffer and pay?
He knows there's pain connected to the shutdown. That's why he pulled back from it. But Steve, I'm not saying do nothing. I'm saying nothing has been done. Look at these two God forbids we just dealt with. This 7-year-old girl losing her life. This 5-month-old kid who's now in the hospital. People want to demonize the men and women on the border and say they did something wrong to these kids. I've seen no proof of that. But I'll tell you what, there is a culprit. There's a culprit. And you know who the culprit is? Congress. And you know why? Because that system's busted. And the rules don't match the resources. They are overwhelmed. I've been there. I've been down there many times, by the way. You know, it's not just this last trip. I've never seen caravans that size before. Neither have they. Nobody's working on those real problems. The wall matters. Physical barriers matter. Technology matters. It's not a panacea. And you're playing this game about the wall like you're one and done.
I agree, totally.
He should be working on the rest of this stuff if he wants to win.
I've never said that. Don't put words in my mouth, Chris.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the president.
The wall solves the problem at the border. The border's not the entire problem. But we wouldn't say, you know, if you had cancer in one part of your body and another, we wouldn't say, well, if it doesn't solve all of them, I'm not going to solve one.
In fact, it exacerbates it.
I'm going to solve one cancer
It exacerbates it.
And then
if you had a
solve
big wall like you want everywhere, you know what happens? More flow to the ports of entry, Anna. And they're overwhelmed. They don't have places to put these people. They don't have ways to take care of them. They don't have the resources. They can't process them.
No, we don't have to put them anywhere because they don't come in. That's the point.
I think the only way that we ever get comprehensive immigration reform is if American people trust that their border is secure. And border security doesn't necessarily call for a wall that extends the entire extension of the border. And you know what? Go read up on El Chapo and the tunnels that he dug from Mexico into the United States and all the drugs that he was able to traffic into them. If you think you can't traffic people through tunnels, you are grossly mistaken.
Overwhelming majority of drugs come into this country through containers
here's the other
in
issue.
the natural
this
border.
Israelis have shown us that anti-tunneling today, as we sit,
their border is a fraction of our own. Go ahead. And they shoot people.
As we sit here this week, the president is a Republican. The Senate is majority Republican, and the House is majority Republican. This is right now, maybe not after January 3rd, but today, on December 19th, this is entirely a Republican problem. And it's Republicans who don't want to go along with the wall. He can't get a majority Republican vote. So we can't blame Democrats. It's Republicans who don't want to spend the $5 billion fiscally responsibly Republicans who don't want to go along with an unnecessary wall. They will go along with other measures to make the border secure.
Yeah,
fiscally responsible.
That Congress has run up a $20 trillion debt in this country, and now they're going to worry about a $5 billion
That's because your party has been co-opted by Trump, and Trump doesn't echo your fiscal conservatism. He passed a tax cut that doesn't pay for itself. That was anathema to you guys an administration ago.
By the way, I joined Anna in criticizing the Hill Republicans. What they want to do is the easy route here. They want to pass a continuing resolution so that they can go home for Christmas and say, we'll deal with this in February, when, by the way, they don't have the gavel anymore in the House. So to me,
they don't want to vote for the wall. Nancy Pelosi was right, Steve.
Cowardice.
When Nancy Pelosi punked the president, she was right.
They should go on record and actually vote against it.
Let me say this. I'm not criticizing Republicans.
All right, hold on. One at a time. Let Anna go.
Very clearly in 2016.
Listen,
we'll see. Go ahead.
I'm not criticizing Republicans. I am saying Republicans own this. I'm actually very happy to see that Republicans are finally standing up to President Loco and telling him when something is local, that they're standing up to him on Syria, because I don't know what he's getting Melania for Christmas, but I know what he gave Vladimir Putin for Christmas, lifting sanctions on that Russian company and leaving Syria. That is a gift to Vladimir Putin. And I am glad that Republicans are finally finding those spines that they've donated to science and saying to him, enough is enough, and we are not going to go along with this.
I find it fascinating that globalists like you want to defend borders in the Middle East, but not our own border here. That's exactly backwards. And the president has it right, saying we have no compelling American interest to be involved in a Syrian civil war, and we are rightly getting out. But we have an absolute interest in defending our own border. That's America first. That was the crux of the 2016 movement, was we are not going to be anymore, we have our policy dictated by globalist interventionists who want to defend people all over the world, but won't defend American citizens from an onslaught of illegal immigration that doesn't make sense for our national.
Because it's a flawed premise.
If you think I am, listen, you love to come after me personally. So let me tell you this: I am old enough to remember when Republicans were globalists, when they gave a damn about what's happening all over the world, when they stood up against human rights abuses in Russia and in Central America and in Angola and all over the world. Because we are not one single country in this planet. We are part of a global nation, and what happens in those countries affects what happens here. If you don't know that, then look at what the caravan is. Look at who the people are caravanning.
I'm not part of a global nation.
Oh, Steve, sweetheart, one of these days I'm going to have to give you a mirror so that you can look at what you are. Because you seem to have.
Let's leave it there.
An American citizen.
Steve.
I am an American citizen too, but I don't forget where I came from or who I am. And most Americans come from immigrants, including you.
Anna, Steve, thank you very much.
Love legal immigration. Absolutely.
Well, not that much, right? You want to cut it down. We'll talk about it another time. Thank you.
No, I don't. No, don't put words in my mouth, Chris. That's not.
Well, no, just to be fair, I don't want to put words in Steve's mouth. It's not what we do on this show. The president just doesn't want to cut illegal immigration. He wants to cut legal immigration. Look at the court battle that's going on right now about changing the asylum laws. A federal judge just said you can't deny people an asylum request just because they say they're coming from gangs. You have to find a showing of fact. The president doesn't like it. But that's about legal immigration, not illegal immigration. It's a distinction with a difference. All right, one of the greatest movies of all time, I say, is getting a modern remake. The question: can Macaulay Culkin recapture the magic? Social media says yes. We're going to show you why next.